For over 50 years, there's been this one song. You know the one. It's a musical monument, an 8.5-minute epic that's also one of pop culture's greatest unsolved mysteries. We are, of course, talking about Don McLean's masterpiece, American Pie.
You hear that opening line, and you think, okay, fairy tale, I know where this is going. But this story doesn't end with happily ever after. Not even close. Instead, it kicks off this incredible lyrical puzzle box that has had people hooked for generations. And that's the big one, isn't it? What is this song actually about? Is it some secret history of rock and roll, a coded political commentary, or something else entirely? Well, today we're going to unpack it all. The theories, the history, and some pretty surprising words from the man himself to get to the heart of it. See, the thing about American Pie is that it's so much more than just a song. It's really a time capsule. It came out in 1971, and it's looking back at the wild decade that just ended, charting that huge shift from the, let's say, perceived innocence of the 1950s to the absolute chaos of the 1960s.
And its impact, it's just undeniable. I mean, the Recording Industry Association of America ranked it as the 5th greatest song of the entire 20th century. That puts it right up there with legends like Over the Rainbow. Its legacy is massive. So, what's the key? How do we unlock this thing?
Well, for decades, Don McLean was famously, and I mean famously, tight-lipped about what the song meant. He gave us almost nothing, with one crucial exception. He did confirm that the entire story hinges on a single tragic event he calls the day the music died. And that right there, that's our starting point.
To really get the tragedy, you gotta picture the scene. This winter dance party tour was just brutal. They were driving through the upper Midwest in the dead of winter in these old-school buses with broken heaters. Can you imagine? After one bus broke down and the drummer actually got frostbite, a totally fed-up Buddy Holly decided he'd had enough and chartered a tiny plane after their show in Clear Lake, Iowa.
And that small plane, it took off in a snowstorm and crashed just minutes later. Now, at the time, Don McLean was just a kid, a paper boy, and he found out about the crash from the very headlines he was delivering. That is, quite literally, the bad news on the doorstep.
The crash took the lives of 3 of rock and roll's brightest young stars. Buddy Holly was only 22. Ritchie Valens, famous for La Bamba, was just 17 years old, and J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson. The pilot, Roger Peterson, who was only 21, also died. For young Don McLean, this wasn't just a news story, it was the end of an era.
Okay, so with that tragedy as its anchor, the song just launches into this impressionistic whirlwind journey through the decade that followed, the 1960s, and everything was changing. The music, the culture, America itself. And this contrast, this clash, is really the heart of the whole song. McLean puts the wholesome images of the 50s, sock hops and the Book of Love, right up against the dark, gritty reality of the 60s. Suddenly you've got the Manson murders being linked to the Beatles' song Helter Skelter, and John Lennon diving into radical politics.
McLean even uses this very specific word, dirge. A dirge is a funeral song, a song of mourning. He's basically saying the music of the 60s stopped being a party and became a soundtrack for loss, nodding to the assassinations of JFK, Martin Luther King Jr., and RFK. The party was definitely over.
So for years, this is what everyone did. They treated the song like a giant puzzle. The quartet? Oh, that's got to be the Beatles. Jack Flash? Clearly Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. 8 Miles High? That's the Byrds. Even Woodstock gets a shout-out. It seriously became a national pastime to try and pin down every single reference.
But then, something pretty fascinating happened. After staying quiet for nearly 50 years, Don McLean himself started talking, especially in a recent documentary. And what he said, well, it started to blow some of the most popular fan theories right out of the water.
Okay, this is probably the most famous theory of them all. For decades, it was just accepted as fact. The jester was Bob Dylan, 100%. The guy who, in many people's eyes, kind of stole the rock and roll crown from Elvis Presley, the king. It all seemed to fit perfectly. But is it true?
And the answer from McLean? A big fat nope. He just debunks it all. In his own words, he's on record saying flat out, Dylan is not the jester. He clarifies that the king with the thorny crown isn't Elvis. It's a reference to Jesus Christ. And that iconic girl who sang the blues, he insists it's not Janis Joplin. I mean, wow, this changes everything.
So, if the song isn't just a who's who of rock history, then what on earth is it about? What does American Pie itself actually symbolize?
Well, according to McLean, we've all been kind of looking at it the wrong way. He says it was never meant to be a board game where every piece has one correct spot. He wanted it to be ambiguous, impressionistic. It's meant to capture a feeling, a whole series of complex ideas, not just be a literal history lesson.
The real theme here, at its very core, is a personal farewell. American Pie is Don McLean's lament for the America he grew up romanticizing. The pie itself isn't a plane. It's a symbol of that simpler, idealized nation. The whole song is basically a eulogy for a dream that, as he saw it, started to die on February 3, 1959, and just completely unraveled over the next decade.
Which kind of leaves us with this final thought, right? For 50 years, everybody tried to solve American Pie. But as it turns out, the song's power doesn't come from having one single right answer. Its genius is in its ambiguity. It allows every single generation to find their own meaning in the poetry. Maybe the mystery was the whole point all along?